Welcome to Caldwell County Today. I'm Paige Counts, Public Information Officer for Caldwell County. Joining me today is Mary Mitchell, Caregiver Support Specialist. Did I get that right, Mary?
You did, very good.
And Lisa Cavanis with Amorem. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's National Caregiver Month, along with National Hospice Month. So it's November's a big month.
Busy month.
Busy month. So I'm going to start with, what is National Caregivers Month?
Well, we recognize it every year, National Caregiver Month, nationwide, and we join in with across North Carolina and across the United States with highlighting caregivers and educating the community more about caregivers, and that there are a lot of caregivers out there that we may not realize are out there. And one thing, some caregivers may not realize they're caregiving right now either, and we've talked about that. We can talk a little more about that, but many times when someone's helping someone, they may not recognize that they're a caregiver. But part of National Caregiver Month is to get information out there, to tell the community that there are many caregivers out there, and there may be some caregivers you might be able to assist along the way or support in some small way. So I try to get that information out there every November. So every November we highlight caregivers.
But Mary, you work as a caregiver support specialist year-round.
I do.
Tell us about the program.
I work with the Area Agency on Aging. The National Family Caregiver Support Program is a federally funded program that supports caregivers. So many times, we have family members who are caring for someone, and they go to the doctor or they may take care of them, and the focus is on the person they're caring for, as it should be. And so with this federally funded program, we come in and we support and we focus on the caregiver, because so much attention is not given to the caregiver that I think is necessary or needed for the caregiver to care for their loved one on this caregiver journey, I call it. And so year-round, we do all we can to provide information for caregivers. We're there to support them, give them information, and let them know that there are resources out there for them. So many caregivers don't realize that there are resources in the community that could help them.
One of those resources is hospice and Amorem. Lisa, talk to us about how Amorem supports caregivers.
Well, I think it's very appropriate that National Hospice and Palliative Care Month is the same as National Caregivers Month, because hospice and palliative medicine, our services revolve around the patient as well as the caregivers. And through palliative medicine, we provide that extra layer of support in helping navigate the system, pain management, symptom management, so it helps the caregivers in doing what they're there to do. And then with hospice care, it goes even a step farther and helps provide some education and training, just hands-on training, like when CNA visits for personal care and nursing and provider visits in your home. And they help you know how to do things, as practical things like, turning a patient in the bed if that's a need, without injury to yourself, because that's a big task. And so we're there for the patient as well as the family through that journey, and that includes the caregivers.
Well, and so much of, like you're saying, with caring for your loved one, many times we've said there's not that Caregiver 101 class that we'd like to have out there for caregivers to show them the things that they need to that would help them along the way caring for their loved one, whether it's changing the sheets in the bed or, like you said, turning them in the bed or helping to bathe them, helping them with brushing their teeth. There are so many things out there that could help them make it a little bit easier for the caregiver and for their loved one that they're caring for as well.
What are some of the challenges of being a caregiver? Lisa's mentioned a few, but what are some of those that most people wouldn't even realize?
Well, it's one of the things that, as we were talking, one thing that I've thought about many times, there are many caregivers that are working. They're working and also caring for a loved one, and doing that double duty, well, triple duty, because a lot of times they maybe have children at home as well. So they're working, raising their children, caring for a loved one, and a lot of those things come together all at one time, and it's tough for the caregiver to to balance all of that, and that can be a huge challenge. Like we were talking about, when you don't know how to do certain things, there are certain things that could help the caregiver on their journey to give them more strength to go through that journey, and to help their loved one to be more comfortable. And also, one thing is that on the side a little bit, I started thinking about the respite services for caregivers that we provide, because so many times caregivers continue to do these things day in and day out, and they are the ones that become drained, and they're the ones that they may become sick during that time when they're caring for their loved one, and they aren't taking a break and taking care of themselves. So part of what I do year-round is to stress to caregivers how important it is to take care of yourself while you're caring for your loved one, because if you don't take care of yourself, there may be a time when you aren't there to care for your loved one, and then who is going to care for them? And so many times, most caregivers that start this journey, they want to care for their loved one. They want to be there for their loved one, but they do it to a fault, I think is the best way to say it, because they don't realize that they aren't taking care of themselves as well. So one of the things that our program, the Family Caregiver Support Program, does provide is respite for the caregiver. And what that is giving the caregiver an opportunity to take a break. Just even a very small break can make a world of difference for a caregiver to step back and maybe go take a walk, maybe go to an appointment. Maybe you haven't had your hair cut in months, and you really want to have a haircut, or you want to maybe go do your nails, have a spa day, anything like that, just to take that break and step back and do something for yourself, which I must say that kind of leads into our theme this year, which is #Caregiver and, because so many times, like I said, the focus is on the caregiver and what they're doing for their loved one, and what their loved one is going through. But what about the caregiver? What are their passions? What are the things that before they were a caregiver that they were interested in? So we're trying to bring that back to the caregiver to say, remember things that you enjoyed doing before you started caregiving. You can still enjoy some of those things now while you're a caregiver. If you enjoyed reading, maybe go ahead when you take that break, go to the library and get a book. And bring it home. And before you go to bed at night, give yourself a little bit of time to read part of a book at night. Or while your loved one is maybe watching a movie or doing a puzzle or resting, that you can sit and read a book. Or take that time to go take a walk or have lunch with a friend. Those things make a huge, huge difference. To have a focus on something else for just a few minutes during the day, to come back and be a better caregiver for your loved one.
And as you were talking, I know this sounds like a very probably stupid question, but since there are no stupid questions, define caregiver for me. Who is a caregiver?
Well, I think, Lisa, and I find that one thing that I do stress is that every single caregiver situation is different. There's not one caregiver situation that is the same as the other one. But there is that thread that everyone is a caregiver. It kind of ties them together, makes that connection for caregivers, which is really important when we are having our support group meetings. But caregiving can be someone who's going to pick up groceries for someone. They may be picking up medicine for them at the pharmacy for them. They may be sorting out their medications each week. On Sunday afternoon, they come over, sort out their medications. They may help them with planning their meals for that week. Something that simple. You're a caregiver. And many times we've talked about this, that people don't recognize that they're a caregiver even for those simple things. You may be coming over to mow somebody's yard because they can no longer do that anymore. Those things are what caregivers do. But now many times those things begin to expand and you take on more and more responsibilities. Most of the time, caregivers are taking on responsibilities gradually. Many times, though, we know that it can happen very quickly, that someone becomes a caregiver. I became a caregiver for someone in an instant. Within a Saturday morning, we were taking a walk, and after a fall, that afternoon I was a caregiver for someone. My husband was a caregiver for me very quickly. One morning I was getting ready for work that afternoon after surgery. I was he was caring for me. So some of those things can happen very quickly, and some things, many times it happens very gradually. And I will jump in. I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but one thing that AARP has done a study. They do a 5-year study, a study every 5 years. And 5 years ago, there were 4.3 million caregivers across the United States. And you can all guess with what has happened in the last year and a half with the pandemic, with COVID, that has jumped to 53 million caregivers across the United States. And I don't think that surprises us that much because of everything that's happened. And many caregivers are caring for more than one person as well. And that's something that they found out with this study, is that we may assume that someone's just caring for one person, but that's not the case anymore. Many times caregivers are caring for more than one individual.
And a lot of times when we think of caregiver, we think of a traditional family member, spouses caring for each other, child caring for a parent. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's always what you're seeing now. I think you maybe see more neighbors caring for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've received many calls from caregivers who are caring for a close friend or neighbor who had no one to care for them. Being a national family caregiver support program, we receive calls from children in another state who have been to our area to visit family, and we will more than likely will receive calls after the holidays coming up because family members come in and they haven't been with a family member for a long time, especially because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Families haven't been together for several years almost. And so we always tell family members, when you're going to visit loved ones, be alert of things, maybe be aware of what's going on in the household, and if you see anything different that maybe needs some attention from the family members, if they're coming to visit their parents or siblings or someone that may need some help along the way. Yeah.
I wanted to add, you mentioned respite, providing respite care for caregivers. Hospice provides that as well. Amorem, in any of our patient care units, a hospice patient can qualify through Medicare for a respite stay. I think it's 5 days every 30 days. And that is to give caregiver relief, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great resource for caregivers.
And we've heard from caregivers who've been able to benefit from that program, that it's so important and it's valuable because their loved one is there at Amorem, they're safe, they're taken care of, and they can step back. Now they're still a caregiver, as we all know, they're still their caregiver, but they can step back a little bit and breathe. And that's what they've told me, that how beneficial that time is, because it's not just a few hours here or a day here and there. It's that longer time, that they can focus on themselves a little bit more and rest.
And it even can focus on not so much being the caregiver, but being the son or being the daughter, and without all that weight of responsibility.
Right.
Because that is a difficult transition to go from son or daughter and parent in an authority position where you are kind of gradually taking on some of the responsibilities your parent has always had.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that is quite the transition for folks. We've talked about kind of some of the struggles of being a caregiver. What are the rewards of being a caregiver?
I think some of the things that I have heard from other caregivers, the rewards of being a caregiver, I think have been that they know their loved one is cared for the way they should be or the way that they want them to be, that they have this opportunity to be with them and to care for them and to take care of them and to help their loved one stay at home as long as possible, which is so important for family members. I've also heard from some caregivers that a particular caregiver I was talking with who was caring for a mother, she actually moved in with her mother, and she said, I would never have had that time with her as an adult child with my mother. We watched so many old movies that my mother wanted to watch because we had that time. And together, she said, we did puzzles together, we watched movies together, we shared meals together, and she said, I never would have had that opportunity to spend that time with my mother had we not I had not taken the time to move in with her and help her on this journey of caring for her. So those are some of the things of the rewards that I know that caregivers have shared with me, is that time with their loved one that you can't replace that at all. Yeah.
And I think too, especially when it's an adult child caring for a parent, it's in some ways it's a way to give back. Mm-hmm. Because they took care of you. Mm-hmm. So it's a good opportunity.
It is a good opportunity to give back. And Mary, you mentioned the transition that some folks have to make into a long-term care facility. Are you still a caregiver once your loved one moves into a long-term care facility?
Oh yes, absolutely, and that's one thing that I do stress to caregivers and to the community because I think it's assumed many times that when someone else now is caring for your loved one, well, you're no longer a caregiver, and that's not the case, because I think Lisa said it very well, that you're still an advocate for them. You're still checking in with them and coming in to see them and making sure that they're okay and being their support for them when they're living in long-term care. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how the Family Caregiver Support Program helps caregivers right here in Caldwell County.
Well, the wonderful thing we do provide, we work with several organizations in the community to have a support group. We've been doing this caregiver support group virtually during COVID, during the pandemic, and we're going to continue to do so. And what we found is caregivers they have the opportunity, they don't have to find someone to stay with their loved one, to take the time to come to the support group and then work out all of their timing with everything. They can just, from their home, as long as their loved one is safe there with them, they can join our support group virtually, which has been a wonderful thing. And the way for individuals to join that is they contact the Caldwell Senior Center, and they send them, they email them the link to go to the support group each month. And what we do is we get together and talk and share information that's available in the community. And not only that, we also provide respite for caregivers in the community. Avenues, we give options for caregivers to receive respite. It's for short term. It's not anything that's meant to be long term, but it's some short term respite that we can provide caregivers. We can also provide information about resources if you're looking for certain, if caregivers are caring for someone with dementia and they need a referral to someone who can help them with some issues they're dealing with. We can refer them to programs that are available. One of them is Project Care, which is a state-funded program to assist families, specifically those families who are caring for someone with dementia. So it's things like that we can refer them to in the community to let them know what's out there for them.
I've heard great things about the support group you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think in addition to the great information you provide, it lets them know that they're not alone, because I think as a caregiver sometimes you can feel a little isolated. Mm-hmm. And think, it's new territory for you, and so to know that other people are navigating that same journey, I think is very helpful.
It is. It's huge, because so many times caregivers do feel isolated and alone on this journey of caring for a loved one, and to realize that there are others out there just like they are that are caring for someone is comforting, and it helps them to share information mm-hmm. with one another about what they're going through and to receive that extra support. So it is wonderful, yeah.
Speaking of caregivers feeling alone and isolated, if someone knows of a caregiver, how can they support that caregiver?
Well, all year I try to highlight caregivers, but especially during November and times like this when we can reach out to the community, we try to share with the community that, as I mentioned, there are 1 in 5 individuals out there who are caregiving for someone right now. And so to know that, odds are most everyone knows another caregiver, someone who is caring for someone. And so I encourage those think about it. And if you know someone who is a caregiver, reach out to them. And just reaching out to them right there, just the call, the text, the email, whatever, to say, I'm thinking about you, how are you doing, makes a world of difference to let them know, going back to what we're talking about as far as isolation. Just reaching out to say, I'm here if you need me. And the interesting thing is when individuals reach out to other caregivers to say, look, I'm running to the grocery store, is there anything that I can pick up for you while I'm on my way, could make a world of difference for someone who maybe can't leave right now, can't leave anytime today to run and pick up that milk they needed or whatever. You could pick that up, run it by for them, and it would make a huge difference. So running errands for them, offering to come and stay with their loved one for a little while they go take a walk, or while they go out and have that frappuccino or something like that, or grab some lunch somewhere just for a few minutes for them to take that break. It's just a little bit of time that we can offer that would help a caregiver tremendously.
Another thing, as we sit here today, we are coming up on the holidays, and the holidays can be very stressful for caregivers. Are there things that happen around the holidays that people could offer more support for a caregiver?
Well, I think just simple things as far as offering to bring a dish over of some sort of addition to a meal, or to offer to do some shopping for them, or wrap some gifts for them, or help them with some decorations or whatever. Because many times caregivers aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about everything that they need to take care of for their loved one, and they're not necessarily thinking about the holidays. And on the other hand, I also encourage caregivers, in the past, if you've done lots of decorating, lots of baking, lots of entertaining, and now you're stressed because how am I going to do all that? I say, let me give you the license to say it's okay if you don't do all that baking. It's okay if you don't do all that shopping. You don't have to. This year could be a little bit different, and you could simplify things a little bit and maybe take some of that stress off yourself by not trying to plan everything like you used to do. And I think family and friends understand more than you realize that you're just going to simplify things and maybe not do quite as much this year, and I think that would make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Right.
As we wrap up here, I'm going to ask the curveball question. What is the one message that you want to get to caregivers? If you could say anything to caregivers, what would that be?
Well, the one thing I would say to caregivers, there's a lot of things. There are lots of things I love to tell caregivers, but one thing that, probably just going back to what I just said, too many times caregivers want to do it all, which is wonderful. I think that's wonderful that most caregivers want to do it all, be there for their loved one, but continue to do everything that around them that might have to be done. Reach out for help in the community. Don't hesitate. There may be, what we have found is that there may be a friend, a neighbor who's just waiting for you to say, could you do this for me, or could you help me with this, and waiting to step in. And then on the other hand, those of you that know caregivers, I'm saying, maybe go ahead and reach out, and you're thinking, I bet so-and-so could use some help. Go ahead and reach out. It's a lot simpler than you think. It's not as time-consuming as you think it would be, and it's so gratifying to help a loved one or help a friend who's a caregiver while they're caring for their loved one. So mine's a double-sided message there to caregivers and those who know caregivers out there.
Well, I think the message I want to give is that you're not alone, and that we can help. We want to help. And you may not think, well, I don't know that they can help me, but just call and say, this is my situation. Mm-hmm. And I think you may be surprised that we can.
And as I was sitting here asking the question that kind of threw y'all under the bus a little bit, I was thinking that, a lot of times caregivers hear, how's your loved one? How's your loved one? And nobody stops to go, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And to the people who know caregivers, stop to say, okay, yes, I want an update on your loved one, but how are you really doing? How can I help you? I think that's important to let people know that they're not alone.
Right. It makes such a difference.
Well, thank you both for being here. Is there anything we need to add? Anything we have forgotten?
The only thing I would like to add is that if anyone would like to contact our office, we'll be glad to help them with locating resources, telling them about what the Family Caregiver Support Program and the Area Agency on Aging does provide for the community, because we serve Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba counties. And if you don't mind posting our information up on the screen,
We certainly will.
I'll be glad to talk with them. They can email us or give us a call.
And Amorem as well.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you both have great resources for the community.
And we'd love for the community to know about it, yeah.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Caldwell County Today.